All right, so good morning and welcome to the best practice webinar for today. Today's best practice webinar will be on closing sales based on my interview with a few salespeople who just had a large number of sales in a short period of time. So it's just not on just closing, it'll also be just focused on the number of sales made. And for the webinar, I both interviewed Kim. Kim was the one who had over 100 sales in 2 weeks. Unfortunately, she was unable to attend the webinars. So I do have some of her ideas that I've incorporated into best practices. But for the webinar today, we're also going to focus on Josh Zimmerman, who had 77 sales in 2 weeks, and use some of his ideas and how he did it. So first, just kind of give an introduction to what Josh did in a 2-week period. He approached us as, during the sales contest, how could he get out to more businesses? So he formulated, a strategy to do that, and that's what I'll be sharing today. But just some of the stats of what he was able to do over a 2-week period. He created about 550 presentations. Between like 200 and 300, he said, he actually presented in person. How he did that was by actually going out and talking to about 25 to 30 businesses per day, was about his estimate. And that resulted in about 77 sales in a 2-week period. About 40% of those was new business, and with a result of about $250,000 in recorded sales. So his strategy for doing this was, again, to think about how could he talk to the maximum number of businesses, over a 10-day period. And he started by thinking about territories. So he picked a very specific territory and then looked at every business within that defined area. His idea was just to identify businesses next to each other, which would allow him to go door to door. So he basically just park his truck, go door to door to each business with a presentation. To do that, he had to create his presentations ahead of time. So he had very simple presentations, didn't necessarily customize them too much per business, but he's able to do those in batches. So he had his presentations for the day done ahead of time. Again, allowing him to do, drop-in calls to 20 plus businesses a day. And he primarily used the one page not to close, but just to get their interest and share information. So the idea was, he would drop into these businesses. He would say, I'm not there to sell. I just need 5 minutes, and then share the information. And that can be, there's a number of ways to do that, of course. One of the ways we suggest is, that you have information to share that will show how our newspaper can bring you, new buyers that you're currently missing. And that should be enough to get their interest and allow you to share some of the information. So with that, again, these were, simple presentations. Josh said they were not necessarily perfect, but they were good enough, and pertain to that business. He did all his presentations the night before, and that was one of the common things that I heard in talking to sales reps who had made a lot of presentations every day, is they did it the night before or did them in batches at the end of the day. That allowed them, in the morning to really focus on the sales calls, whether that was in drop-in calls or by phone. Again, he was just saying, I'm sharing some information, interesting information with you, showing them the opportunity, because these can be mobile presentations now. He was able to adjust any of this information, edit the information there when he was talking through the prospects, if needed. And he used those calls just to qualify, not necessarily to sell or close. So he wasn't, presenting an ad campaign yet. Again, just getting their interest. And so to follow up, those calls could typically last, 10 minutes, very short. So he's able to do quite a few per hour. But for follow up, Josh stressed that he did follow up as many times as it takes. He didn't let them drop through if they were interested. Most of those reviews were done by phone. So the ad campaign itself, the actual details and putting together an ad package, was done mostly by phone and email. What he was able to sell during that, this was a combination of renewals and new business. So I saw quite a range. I mean, the lowest was probably $250 ad campaign. The largest amount was, $54,000. That was to a renewal. The largest new business sale was $34,000. I'd say the typical range for ad packages was the $1,200 to $2,500 ad packages was the most common ones. So it wasn't just one ad campaign. They were all, custom per the business. But I think the efficiencies that he gained was by doing the actual ad campaign presentation, more by phone and email, and using his time, on the road, dropping into the businesses simply to get their interest, show them the value of what you're offering for the newspaper. So those were Josh's ideas and his success. Again, 77 sales in a 2-week period. Also, that was his focus. Just talking to him last week, he also said that, a lot of those businesses that he presented to, because he presented to so many, are still, signing up for advertising even now. So he says he'll be pretty busy just, following up on the contacts that he established. So now what I'd like to do is just kind of go through and review some common best practices with a large number of sales, and also just reviewing some of the ad seller tools that we have available to assist you in that process. So the first thing I want to share is some good news, possible good news. Some of the salespeople I've talked to said, well, there's, in our market or my territory, there's just not, hundreds of businesses out there to present to. And one of the findings that Pulse Research has discovered over the years in doing surveys of businesses is that 70% of businesses say that they have never been contacted by the local newspaper about advertising. And that may seem like a large number, but if you think about, who they are, most of these are service businesses, businesses without a storefront. I know when I always talk to small businesses, even businesses that I use, I also, ask them, what do you do for advertising? Who's talking to you about advertising? And of course, they say they get a lot of calls about digital. They say they get calls from other media, but they don't always say that they get calls from the newspaper, especially if they're a smaller business. And there are a lot of businesses out there, many, again, because they're service oriented, aren't necessarily very visible. Examples of that could be like CPAs, credit repair services, counselors, etc. But still, there might be a right size ad for these service related businesses. In fact, Kim, who had over 100 sales in a 2 weeks, primarily focused on service related businesses, small service related businesses. And her ad campaign was a smaller introduction package, under $500. So she was presenting, the same package or the same special offer to all these businesses. The other thing, I identified in talking to sales reps who just, again, talked to a large number of businesses in a 2 week, is they all had a plan, a specific strategy. It wasn't always the same one, but it was basically just some process that they developed for systematically going through and talking to a large number of businesses. So that was, identifying a focus. What kind of business are you going to target? Or what area are you going to target? Or how will you group those businesses together? The focus was on getting the interest of the business first, not necessarily putting together the ad package, right away for all those businesses you're identifying. But then the focus of the ad campaign or the close part was just finding a solution, showing that prospect, showing that business where you can get them more customers, more clients. And then, of course, having the right ad package for them to get started. They all use the available tools within AdSeller. We have the prospecting program, which helps you identify businesses, build lists. We have the teaser, which can help you get appointments. Getting the interest of the business either with a phone call or sharing that by email. And of course, the one page. The new thing I learned from Josh was not using it part of a larger presentation or to close a sale, but simply kind of using it almost like an extension of the teaser. Getting the interest of the business, showing them the number of customers you can bring them. So some ideas on focus, really just to make better use of time. That can be one idea I heard was just infrequent advertisers, infrequent or past advertisers. Just getting a list of them, all of them, and focusing in on past advertisers. They've advertised before, so they may be more likely to advertise again. The other idea was Josh's, which was geographic. Just businesses close to each other. I think that strategy was just mostly for the ability to drop into the most number of businesses, each day. And the third thing is, what we'd recommend in general, which is by business type. By business type could be by, category. We have the prospector email we send out each week, which focuses on one category. And that's what Kim did. I mean, each night she would find, 3 or 4 different business types and to focus on, build a call list, and then call those businesses the next day. Her call list, and what she said was she would actually call on up to 100 businesses each day by phone, but she had to group those together by category, like service related businesses each day before. So to help with that, we do have our prospecting program under prospects, where you can search by category, identify businesses in your market or your sales territory. So that's a resource for you. Each Monday, we also send out to ad directors the weekly prospector suggestions. So that will be just one category to focus on. And with that, we also have a pre-made example presentations, as well as a short webinar video under 10 minutes that shows how to present to that specific category. And I think one of the main advantages of kind of focusing by category is as you put those presentations together, it's very easy to duplicate those presentations. And then as you talk to those businesses, you're really developing some expertise, a knowledge base on what's important to that business category. The teasers, we've been getting great feedback on as people are starting to use those more and more. I like the teasers because it really lets the opportunity, what you're able to provide, do a lot of the work. You can kind of build those, focus on those one category at a time. Then it allows you, as you get response to those, schedule appointments, and then the presentations that you create are to some degree already pre-qualified. They are interested in advertising. The one page, of course, using one page, to get interest or to close. The one page really just shows them, where and how you can get that business more customers and more clients. Again, some of the words you can use is something like, if I can show you where you can get more business that you're already not getting, would you consider advertising? And businesses, to do that, they want new ideas and solutions. And then the how of it is, consistent advertising is what's proven to work. And then showing them the ad campaign that you've put together that will get them those new customers. And for reviewing, some of those key points, in the presentations itself, with the ad seller, you're able to show them the total opportunity. There's really probably more business out there for businesses than they realize, both in terms of the number of households that are going to shop, at their business type, as well as the amount of spending your readers are going to be doing. So you want to help them get a share of your readers' planned spending. Also identifying where they can grow, specific products and services, opportunities for growth. Again, business that they're not getting elsewhere. And also show them what they're missing. You know, their other media is not reaching those same households that you are reaching. They're not reaching those same customers. Therefore, they're missing out by not advertising with you. And finally, they need to get very few customers in order to pay for that ad campaign. And of course, you know, this isn't always appropriate, and it does require more work. But if possible, you know, spec ads can help. You know, a lot of businesses will buy simply just a, you know, a great ad that they're, you know, interested in running. So that is the presentation for today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to either ask them now, or you can also send those by email, and you know, we'll get back to you. Yes, this PowerPoint presentation, I can share with you both the PowerPoint, or I build it in Keynote. I'll send it to you by request. Also, we will have a recording of this webinar available on the site. And somebody's asking for copies of the presentations. There are copies of both the webinar, and I'll also show you in the site where you can see examples of other presentations. Okay, and yeah, if anybody does want a copy of the PowerPoint specifically, you can also just put that in the question field here, and I'll see those and send them to you. Okay, so somebody had a question about teasers. Are they using them as a shotgun process or targeted? In talking to salespeople, I've seen both approaches. Sometimes they will be actually creating presentations specifically for a business, and from that, taking that teaser, sending that out to the business, as well as contacting them by phone. But we also saw during, you know, especially during the Sales Blitz contest, where people had created over 500 teasers, and they were simply going through by category without creating presentations, pulling out the teaser, and then sending it to every business type that they can find. I think, you know, both approaches are valid and can work. It really just depends on probably if you have an email list, you know, for those businesses. As far as the best practice so far, I would recommend next week will be our last webinar in this series, and that's going to be John Marling doing what he's calling the best of the best practices. So he's going to kind of incorporate many of the ideas, things we've learned over from the last 5 webinars into one webinar presentation. So I'd suggest you attend that. You'll be sending out an email about that soon. So that would be a good one to join. Okay, I'm just kind of reading through. We have a lot of questions here. Okay, so a question about what to use in the subject line when sending the teaser. You know, in general, of course, just whatever works. I haven't heard of one that's necessarily appropriate for everybody, but I just like personalizing them emails as much as possible so that they know or get the idea that you're sending it specifically to them and it's not a mass email. So, you know, focusing again on, you know, their business, what you can do for them, you know, and personalizing it as much as possible. The idea is just to get them to read the email. Another thing that I always recommend is actually calling the business, if possible, before you email. Let them know that you are, you know, sharing the information for them. It's the information that you talked about or mentioned in a voicemail, and then they're more likely to be looking for that email and more likely to read it. Okay, so Josh said as far as his turnaround time from presenting to closing, most of the sales, he had created the presentation, presented, and actually recorded the sale within 2 weeks. So he was able to use, some form of urgency. In his case, it did correspond with another uh, promotion that they were doing, which was, I believe, some premium positioning. So he's probably able to, leverage that a little bit in creating some urgency. And that was the other thing that Kim said is that, for her to close over 100 sales, she really focused on urgency. They had a special offer for that month, and that they needed to take advantage of that special offer, and make a decision immediately. Um, yeah, as far as getting, one question that came up yesterday was for the teasers, how do you get email addresses? That's not always readily available. This is a simple approach, but I would suggest calling them. Simply, you're not always going to talk to the person, but even if you're talking to somebody who answers the phone, you have information to share with that prospect, but you don't have their email address available. You'd ask for it there, or just calling the person themselves and briefly stating that you have some new information about their business based on some recent research that you did that you would like to share with them, and can you forward it over? I found that people often give me their email address simply because they want to get me off the phone. So they are willing to share, the email. All right, so that looks like those are most of the questions for today. If you have any questions that come to mind later, feel free to email. And I want to mention that we will have one more webinar next Wednesday, again at the same time. We'll be sending out an email to promote that, and I would recommend attending that one because it's going to be the best of the best, and it will probably incorporate the full use of the AdSo program, Making Sales. It'll be with John Marling, and you'll be open to asking many questions. Another idea is if you have questions ahead of time for that webinar, feel free to email them to me, and I'll see if John can work that into his presentation. So on the AdSo program itself, if you click on Help, and then under Videos, we have recordings of the webinars over the past few weeks that you can watch. If you click on Examples, you will see videos on how to present by category. Even if you are not presenting by those specific categories, if you haven't seen those videos yet, I would recommend watching at least one. They're very informative because they really show how you can customize the presentations, customize the approach by business type. And again, thank you for attending the webinar today, and feel free to contact us at Pulse Research. You can email me at nap@paper.net with any questions or requests. We're always available to do refresher trainings for sales teams or individuals. Each Thursday, we do have a webinar at 8:30 Pacific time for anybody who's new to AdSiller. Links to that is available on the AdSiller site, or contact me directly by phone or email if you'd like me to set up a webinar for the sales team. All right, thank you very much for your time today.